All right, everybody. Today, I'm here talking to you guys about what is the worst possible exercise. And the answer might surprise you, unless you know me personally, then the answer will not be surprising at all. Some may say it's the Bulgarian split squat, which I'm performing right here, but to be determined. About me, I'm the owner and founder of Empirical Fitness, and this is all the different ways you can contact me and reach out. There's my email, like Instagram. If you're trying to get nerdy or if you are a nerd, I'd say and recommend you come hang out there to lift weights. And obviously, you can find me on, I don't really use Twitter anymore, but Threads, TikTok, so on and so forth. But yeah, about me. My perspective. Exercise has no moral alignment. There is no good, there is no evil, but there is a picture on here that is very blurred and weird looking. But oh well, that is. It didn't look that way when I originally made this presentation, guys. Sorry. Um, but yeah, so there's actually no such thing as a bad exercise. And I'll explain and elaborate about that later. Now, there could be something about exercise optimization. There are some exercises that tend to have or be slightly more effective for certain things depending on what you're trying to do. That is true. And we're talking about that. That's more optimization. That doesn't mean good or bad, right? So for example, an exercise that is really good for creating stability is probably not very good for hypertrophy, would be an example. So exercise and purpose. So an exercise that you're performing, is it for endurance? Or are you trying to create some positional strength and stability? Are you trying to build muscle? Are you trying to implement explosive power? Are you just trying to do raw strength? Are you just trying to transfer to your sport? Like all those things matters, and that's why all those things can affect what exercise you choose and your exercise selection. Ooh, and quick tidbit, guys, I really recommend and highly recommend you stay uh to the end of this podcast presentation because I'm going to go over with you guys about like how to transform your physique and really get that going. And I'll kind of show you how I do that at the end of this podcast episode. So stay tuned till the end. Mhm. But yes, these are various purposes and or adaptations that an exercise could do if you had it in your program and why. So how can you view exercise? So these are two very popular, well-known I don't call them influencers. I don't call them influencers. You have Mike Israetel right here, who is trying to get his pro card in bodybuilding. Really cool guy. You'll see him critique a lot of people's like exercise routines and workout routines on his YouTube channel. The other guy is Paul Carter. He, I believe, classifies himself as a hypertrophy specialist, and so he won't critique other people's programs. He will get in some online fights in about like certain principles, but like he won't critique other people's like programs. Like Mike Israetel will sit there video by video, or exercise by exercise and say this is stupid, this is bad. Oh, it's not so bad. They're actually performing that well, so on and so forth. This Paul Carter does not necessarily do that, but he will like get in arguments with you online and a whole bunch of other stuff. But essentially, both of these guys often look at exercise and activities through specific lenses. Paul Carter mainly a hypertrophy lens. Like how locked in are you to like hypertrophy? Like if you're locked in hypertrophy, obviously good. Mike Israetel often does a hypertrophy lens or like a sport specific transfer lens, so on and so forth. But that's who both these guys are. Um, and they really make you they really point out in their channels and in their critiques like why do this exercise. For Paul, like why if it's for hypertrophy, you should be doing these. And I want to, for those watching and listening right now, the reflective question I want to ask you, is there a better way to accomplish your goal, right? If your goal is balance and stability, is there an exercise that will better elicit yourself to balance and stability? Um, if your goal is hypertrophy, is there a better way to do and optimize your hypertrophy for a specific muscle group within a specific exercise, so on and so forth. But yeah, that's who these guys are. Um, really want you guys to think about why do this exercise and is there a better way to get to your goal, which might mean switching out a different variation, progression, or regression of an exercise in order to do that. So lens of exercise. So here we have the prone hamstring curl and we have the seated hamstring curl. So the seated hamstring curl puts your hamstrings in the lengthened position, and that brings about a concept of what we call stretch mediated hypertrophy, which means you put the muscle in the lengthened position and work it in order to create a hypertrophy stimulus, which means increased muscle growth and size. So that's what the seated hamstring curl will kind of allow us to do and like focus on, right? That's the benefit of that. The prone hamstring curl, because you're prone, there's not a lot of hip flexion. Hip flexion happens like when you're seated, when your thigh bones are at like 90 degrees. Because there's not as much hip flexion here, there's not as much hamstring length here. So this would technically be less effective for hypertrophy because as far as hypertrophy, a requirement for hypertrophy, something that helps is stretch mediated, meaning you have to have a longer stretch. So the exercise on the left, as far as working your hamstrings, could elicit, or sorry, will elicit a higher hypertrophy stimulus than the exercise on the right. But then why do the exercise on the right? Okay, the position that this individual is in here, prone, kind of half hinged, you find that position when you're ready to jump, right? Hip extension. So this movement here, whenever you're bent at the hip, and often you bend your knees and you're gonna do a broad jump and you go whoom, right? Your hip extends and your knees extend and your ankles extend too. It's triple extension in you jump. Getting into that position, the final kind of going into hip extension and like essentially scooping. You see like someone who broad jumps, they throw their entire body forward and then bring the limbs forward afterwards. That last little pickup, the hamstrings could help with that. The hamstrings worked in this position might also transfer better to running. They might transfer better, slightly better to jumping to a couple other different like activities, right? So this exercise, prone hamstring curl, might transfer better to a different sport and or activity. So there's still a reason for doing the prone hamstring curl. It just depends on what your reason is. If your goal is hypertrophy, obviously the exercise on the left is better. If your goal is to strengthen your hamstring in a position related to an activity, exercise, sport, or something else you like to do, the prone hamstring curl may be a better option, right? Just something to think about. Once again, neither exercise is bad. One might be better and one might be more optimal depending on what you're trying to do or what your goals are. Bad or just bad for you. So for example, you have someone squatting here. If you're doing a deep squat and you have poor ankle mobility, that tends to lead you to having knee pain. I think I've talked about it on another podcast interview with Noah Drew, where we talked about the regional interdependence model and or upstream downstream concept, meaning that like the area that is symptomatic may not be the area that's a problem. So often people have issues with knee pain when doing deep squats, not because they have bad knees, solely because they actually have poor ankle mobility. Ooh, bench press. So we have bench press, right? Bench press is not an exercise that I, barbell bench press in particular, it's not an exercise that I recommend for someone who has poor shoulder mobility. Or what I mean by shoulder mobility is someone who has like impacted or kind of injured shoulders. So your shoulder blade to your shoulder girdle is like your hip is to your ball and socket, right? So your hip, your pelvis is like this static thing. It can kind of bend and flex a little bit, right? But it's mainly like this innominate is another word for the bone. It means it doesn't move very much. And then you have the ball that fits into the hip socket and it's sturdy so your ball can kind of do a whole bunch of stuff and kind of be okay, right? Your scapula is like that for your shoulder as far as because it's also another ball and socket, but it's very less secure of a ball, if you will. And so your shoulder, your scapula, if your scapula doesn't move well or doesn't move in the position the way it's supposed to, you could be at risk for injury. Now, the barbell bench press is a great way to provide heavy load and stimulus to the chest muscles and the chest musculature. However, when you do the barbell bench press, your scapula are pinned back and down and don't move, but then your shoulder travels through a big range of motion. That's why you see like a lot of elite bench pressers end up with like some impingement or some difficulty moving the shoulder or some kind of long-lasting or long-term injury over time from barbell bench pressing, just because your shoulder, like if you see someone overhead press or take a double over press overhead, you see your shoulder blade actually go into upward rotation in order to better stabilize the arm overhead, right? Your shoulder blade isn't static, it's not just back and down, it has to move. Barbell bench press, your pinned shoulder blades are pinned in position while you're doing that. Like if you see someone that has like a slight arch, their spine is extended while they're benching, they usually don't cave and go back up. So because of that, shoulder blade's not moving, puts a lot of stress on the shoulder, and you can end up with like a labral tear or some kind of other injury, right? Um, Dumbbell bench press allows for a little bit more movement of the shoulder. So it's technically like a healthier exercise for your shoulder, but less effective for raw strength, right? So if your goal is to maintain healthy shoulder stability, if that's like your focus, like the dumbbell bench press would be pretty cool. Also, it can be a decent hypertrophy stimulus because the dumbbell bench press allows you to kind of go through a bigger stretch, but the barbell is a far more sturdy movement and can still be taken through a very large range of motion, enough to cause hypertrophy. But the problem is, once again, it can be hard on the shoulder based off who you are, your experience, and your shoulder mobility. That being said, barbell bench press, if you've got an impacted shoulder or an impinged shoulder, may not be the best exercise for you. There could be other ones. There could be a neutral grip bench. It could be a dumbbell bench. There's just an array of other exercises. So is the barbell bench press bad? Because some people have tried to argue that with me. The barbell bench press is a bad exercise. It's not bad. It may be bad for you and where you're at, but you could also address some dysfunction and may not have any other issues with that. So please keep that in mind. There are no bad exercises. An exercise can be bad for you at this or at any given time. So, in summary, your exercise should have purpose. The exercise should have a purpose, a reason for it. There's a should be some kind of inherent benefit of choosing it and or performing it, and of course, they should elicit some sort of adaptation. For example, if I'm doing Romanian deadlifts, right? I can do it with a kickstand, my back leg's on the ground, making me more stable. I can do it with no kickstand, my back leg is floating in the air, and then I got to perform the exercise, right? If I have my back foot against the ground, or sorry, connected to the ground, that is a much more stable movement, which will then tend to give me a better hypertrophy stimulus. If I take my back leg off the ground, that will then focus on balance and I won't be able to load as heavy, but I would better be able to focus on stability and make sure I'm rooted and connected to the ground via my feet. So both those exercises have a purpose depending on what your current goals are, what your desires are, and what your game plan is. Purpose, benefit, adaptation. Those are the three things any exercise should have in your program or in your routine and while you're doing it. Yeah. So, what is stopping people from getting results? So, a lot of people think, unless obviously, if you're an elite bodybuilder with an elite bodybuilding coach who's looking at you and goes, "Ah, yes, I see your omohyoid muscle, by the way. That's a tiny muscle that's like right here. Your omohyoid muscle is not big enough. We need to train it." And you're not going to ever target your omohyoid muscle, guys. Once again, I'm just throwing this out there. We should focus on making that specific muscle, like obscure tiny muscle, bigger so you look better on stage in a certain pose or position, right? We're not talking about that level of nuance. Instead, many people think, hey, my abs don't show because I'm not doing enough core work. My abs don't show because I don't do enough sit-ups. I don't do my core is strong enough. I don't plank enough. I don't play hard enough. I don't do enough rotation. I don't train my abs in the right way. I remember I used to think my abs didn't show because of P90X, right? So like P90X was this hardcore ab ripper X was the name of the workout, and I would do it a whole bunch. And I thought doing it a whole bunch would then essentially make me get abs. And so that's not one of the reasons why people get abs. That's not something holding your back. As far as like your aesthetic, how lean, how toned you are, that's actually not indicative of your workout program. This is my transformation, right? And to be clear, I don't walk around like, if you're thinking you're looking, this will be all the way on the right. Like my leanest on the right. I don't walk around at that body fat percentage. I'm probably walking around a little higher now. Um, I was at one point up to 242 because I was going through some health issues myself, but now I'm kind of back down. I weighed in at 226 as far as a low this week. I'm sitting around 227 right now. I would like to think I'm like 8 to 9% body fat last time I calibrated myself, but I'll calibrate again on Friday and I'll have an update. But this is my transformation, guys. I went from like a solid 245, 250 down to 200 or like a 198, right? And this took probably like 90 days, my 90-day transformation. And it was hard. And you guys might think like, how hard were you training? How much were you lifting in order to kind of get this crazy transformation? It wasn't how hard or crazy or intense that I was lifting. It was all about my nutrition. The workouts that I was doing from all the way on the left to all the way on the right were the same. I did the same workouts all the way through. Nothing changed in my workout routine that caused this. Now, what did change was my nutrition. I overhauled my nutrition in order to get here because they say you can't out train a bad diet, right? But no one really knows what that means because it's like, what is a bad diet? Does a bad diet mean you can't have cookies? That's a load of crap because I'm going to eat my cookies. That's what I do here. If you know me personally, you know I love my gourmet cookies from HEB, s'mores, and or chocolate chunk. And you know I love my cookies over Texas ice cream. HEB, if you can hear this, sponsor me. I eat your ice cream on the regular. You know I do those two things. I do those two things regularly, often. And most people would think that would be like a bad diet, right? Your diet should allow you to have the least amount of restraint possible. There was a quote that I thought was brilliant, and it said, the people who have the most amount of discipline use the least of it. Meaning, if you're fighting proverbial mental, metaphorical, dietary demons day in and day out, eventually they win, right? Like it takes a sharp rock left in a stream for long enough, or a river long enough, will become dulled. Eventually you lose that battle, like no matter how sharp your edge is. And so your diet should actually allow you to eat the things that you like to eat because food is amazing and you should be able to eat what you want to eat and you can eat what you want to eat and still get results. Eat how, now granted, how much you eat is a different factor. That's a totally different factor. We'll talk about that in a different iteration and possibly a different podcast episode. But yeah, so this is my transformation. And most people thought I changed my workout routine to get here. I did not change my workout routine. It was my nutrition that overhauled and created such a transformation. So, um, I want to let you guys know. So this is obviously the end of the podcast and the episode and this episode, but I want to let you guys know that we at Empirical Fitness are actually launching some and trying to ramp up our nutrition coaching. So me and my team, we will help you overhaul your nutrition and help you get some kind of transformation, whatever your goals are, whatever you want to see in 90 days, let us know and we can hopefully make that happen for you. Obviously we'll take before pictures, we take some after pictures, and we really want to show you off and help you flex your stuff, if you will. It's currently, as I'm making this video, it's Halloween soon, leading into Thanksgiving in December. Most people wait till January 1st to try to chase results and then end up falling off well before March. If you're watching this podcast, if you're listening to it, I actually want to challenge you to start chasing your goals now, build and set in the habits now as far as your nutrition and your dieting that let you see success starting on January so that you won't quit by March or April, right? But yeah, so if you're interested in nutrition coaching, this is the link for it right here. And I'll make sure to then put that link in the comments so you could fill out the form. Myself or one of my team members will get back to you and get at you. And we'll just go over what your goals are, whether or not they're achievable, and usually they are, and see what we can help you do. Because once again, If you've been working out for a long time and throwing yourself up against the proverbial wall of your workout routine and not still don't have the physique, the aesthetic you're looking for, your workout routine probably isn't the problem. It's your nutrition. So let us help you with your nutrition, help you get these gains, and yeah, get these results. But yeah, guys, to sum up today's podcast episode, there is no such thing as a bad exercise. There's exercise that can be bad for you. There's exercises that can be suboptimal, but the exercise inherently itself isn't like bad, right? And also, nutrition is vital to your aesthetic transformation. And if you're trying to transform your body, your aesthetic, fill out the nutrition interest form so we can help you do that. But yeah, guys, this is the end of my presentation. I hope you guys liked it. If you have questions, comments, concerns, I guess throw them in the comments and or reach out to me via email. But yeah, guys, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Later.